Today we're going to talk about multiplying and dividing rational numbers. Those are positive and negative fractions and decimals. We're going to use the same rules as when these are integers. Now there is a typo on here, so make sure you're following along. So if there's an even number of negative signs in a problem, that means it's going to have a positive answer. Okay, so if there's two numbers in the problem, that means if they have the same sign, it's going to be positive. Okay, what that means is that a positive times a positive equals, or sorry, my bad. A negative times a negative equals a positive. Sorry, my pen is like freaking out right now. There we go. Okay, and then a positive times a positive is also a positive. We know that. We've been doing that for a while. If there is an odd number of negative signs, the answer is going to be negative. So an example of this is when they have different signs, and here's where the typo is. If they have different signs, if one number is positive and one number is negative, the answer is going to be negative. Okay. Same rules as when we did integers. Same sign, positive, different signs, negative. Okay. We're going to start off with decimals, start off with multiplying decimals and then dividing decimals. Remember, when we're multiplying decimals, we just multiply them like it's a 25 times a 36, and then we put that decimal back in at the end. Again, there's just one extra step when it's positive and negative numbers, is that then we have to look to see what sign the answer would be. Okay, so if you want to do that right away at the beginning, so you don't forget to do that at the end, that's what I would do. So right now I have a negative times a positive, so I'm going to just tell myself that answer is going to be negative. Okay, so that when I get down to my answer, I know to just put a negative sign on it. Other than that, we're just going to kind of ignore the negatives, ignore the decimals, and we're just going to multiply it out. So we've got 6 times 5, which is equal to 30. Write our 0, carry our 3. 6 times 2 is 12, plus 3 is 15. Done with the 6, erase my carry. When I move on over to that 3, I have to put a 0 placeholder because we're moving over to the tens place. And I've got 3 times 5, which is 15. 3 times 2 is 6, plus 1 is 7. Add those up. 0 plus 0 is 0. 5 plus 5 is 10. Write my 0, carry my 1. 7, 8, 9. Okay, now remember how we move our decimal back in? We look to see how many numbers are behind the decimal in each number in our problem. Add those up, so we would have 2 decimal places in our answer. So we start at the end, we move it in 1, 2. So our answer is 9.00, which is just 9. And then remember when we went back up, it is going to be a negative 9 because one number is negative and one number is positive. Okay, so go ahead, pause the video, try number 2 on your own if you haven't already, and then resume the video to check your answer. All right, so we've got a negative times a negative. I know that my answer at the end is going to be positive because they have the same sign, so it's positive. Now I'm just going to stack those numbers. I always want to put the number with the most digits on top because it's going to be less work for me later on. I do not have to line up those decimals, so I do not have to put the 4 under the 9 and then add a 0 placeholder. You can, but at the end you're just going to have an extra like 0 at the end that we wouldn't need. So again, it's just more work. So if that's easier for you to know that you always have to line up the decimals, that's fine. But when we multiply, we technically don't have to, like we do when we add and subtract. All right, so let's start with the 5. 5 times 2 is 10. 8 times 5 is 40, plus 1 is 41. 9 times 5 is 45, plus 4 is 49. Done with that 5, put my 0 placeholder. I'm going to erase my carries so that I don't get confused. 4 times 2 is 8. 8 times 4 is 32. Write my 2, carry my 3. 9 times 4 is 36, plus 3 is 39. Add those up. We've got a 0, 9, 11, 14, 4. Then I come back in here. Sorry, this looks like a 7. I'm going to make that so it looks like 1. There we go. 2 numbers after the decimal here. 1 number after the decimal here. So I should have 3 numbers after my decimal in my answer. I start at the end, move it in 1, 2, 3. This would be 44 and 1900ths. We can chop off at 0. And remember, it's a positive 44. This pen is driving me crazy today. Sorry, guys. Positive 44.19. All right, so that's multiplying decimals. Dividing decimals. When we divide decimals, and that's what this little note was up here, when dividing the divisor, so the number outside the division box, it needs to be a whole number. We don't want to have to see how many times like 1.2 can go into 6.7. That's going to be too hard. We want to make that into a whole number by moving the decimal one place to the right for this number. If it was like 1.24, we'd have to move it twice to make it 124. Okay, but we just move that decimal right until it becomes a whole number. Whatever we do to the divisor, we have to do the same thing to the dividend, because you can't just change one number in a division problem and end up with the same answer. So we move the decimal over once here, we move it over once here, and then it's just going to become a normal division problem. Okay, so when we set this up, we'd have the first number always goes inside the division box, so we'd have 6.3 being divided by 1.3. Okay, 1.3 is not a whole number, so I have to move that decimal over once. I would do the same thing with my 6.3. Okay, now I'm going to rewrite this so it's a little bit neater to see. I have my 13 on my outside, my 63 on my inside. My decimal is here. I can leave it out for now. I might need it later, not sure. But I'm just going to put it there so we know where the decimal is, and then I'm going to just move it right up to my answer. Okay, remember those decimals have to be stacked in the problem and in your answer. So now we're just going to go through some multiplying. So how many times can 13 go into 63? Well, let's just do some guess and check. I'm going to guess it's going to be somewhere like around 3 or 4. So let's check 4. So let's do 13 times 4. 3 times 4 is 12. 4, 5, 52. Plus another 13 would be 65. So that can't go in another time. So it would be 4. Because 13 cannot go into 6, so we have our 0. 13 can go into 63 4 times, which is equal to 52. So we subtract, see what's left over. 13 cannot go into 11, so we know that we're doing this right. If we got a number down here that was bigger than 13, that means it could have gone in one more time up there. Okay. So now we have a remainder. We have no more numbers left. We add a 0 and we bring it down. At this point, if we hadn't already put that decimal in right here, we'd have to add that in at this point, because 63.0 is the same thing as 63, but 630 is not the same. Okay. All right, so 13 can go into 110. I'm going to guess it's going to be somewhere around 7, because if 4 times is 52, that would, if we double that, it'd be a little bit more than 100. So actually, let's try 8. I'm going to try 8. 13 times 8. 3 times 8 is 24, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, okay. So it goes in there 8 times. So I put that 8 above that 0 that I just brought down. Oh my gosh, this pen is driving me nuts. And that is 104, so we'd subtract 110 minus 104 is 6. You could do all the borrowing and whatever to get that answer as well. Still have a remainder, so I have to add another 0, bring it down. And we're just going to do this one more time because this is going to go on forever. So it's 13 can go into 60. Again, it would be the same. It would be 4 times as before, because that would be 52. We'd be left with 8. Again, we'd bring down another decimal. We'd have to keep going forever. Okay, so at this point, the directions, if you'd ever have a problem like this, would say to round to the nearest 100th or 10th, or it would tell you what to do. Right now, we're just going to stop for the sake of this problem, because like I said, it's going to go on forever, and I know that. So at this point, we'd have a negative divided by a negative, which is a positive. So we'd have a positive 4.84. Okay. Number 4. We have 88.2 being divided by a negative 3.6. I know a positive divided by a negative is going to give me a negative answer. So when I'm done with this problem, I just need to remember to put that negative into my answer. My first number goes inside the division box. Second number goes outside. I'm going to have to move that decimal over to make it a 36. Moved it over once, so I move it over once inside. This new problem now becomes 882 divided by 36. 36 cannot go into 8. 36 can go into 88 twice. Let's check. Yep, 72. We'd subtract 8 minus 2 is 6, 16. 16 is smaller than 36, so we know it could not go in there another time. Bring down our 2. 36 can go in 162. Let's guess maybe like 4, because I'm thinking it's going to be around like double 72. So 36 times 4, 6 times 4 is 24, 12, 144. Yep, that's as close as we're going to get. So we'd subtract 144, that was 4 times. Have to borrow. Okay, left with 18. We have a remainder, we have no more numbers left, so here's where we'd have to add that decimal. As soon as we add that decimal, let's put that decimal up in our answer so that we don't forget where it goes later. And then we put a 0 to give us another number to bring down. 36 can go into 180. I'm going to say 5 times. Again, I'm just going to double check that. 6 times 5 is 30. 3 times 5 is 15, 16, 17, 18. It goes in there perfectly. 5 times minus 180, 0 remainder. Remember we said a positive divided by a negative is a negative. So this is going to be a negative 24.5. I kind of ran out of room, so I'm just going to fit it in down here. Negative 24.5. Main thing when we're dividing decimals, that number on the outside has to be a whole number. Okay, if not, we have to make it one. Fractions. So multiplying and dividing fractions I think are actually easier than decimals, which is different from adding and subtracting, I feel. Because to multiply fractions, remember, you just multiply across. So if I've got like 1/4 times 2/3, I would just go ahead and I would multiply 1 times 2 is 2, 4 times 3 is 12, and then I would simplify from there. Divide both those by 2 to get 1/6. Okay. To divide fractions, remember we keep the first number the same. This is where we keep, change, flip. So we keep the first number the same. We change it to multiplication, and we flip the second fraction upside down to its reciprocal, and then we would just multiply across from there. Okay, so when we have mixed numbers, remember we have to make them improper fractions. This is not like adding and subtracting where we could just multiply our whole numbers and then just multiply our fractions. That is not the same with multiplying and dividing. We cannot do that. That will get us the wrong answer. We have to make them improper and then multiply across. So remember, to make a number improper, we multiply the denominator times the whole number. So 3 times 1, and then add in that numerator. 3 times 1 is 3, plus 2 is 5. So this is a negative, oh my goodness, 5/3, denominator stays the same, times 4 times 2 is 8, plus 1 is 9, negative 9/4. When we multiply across, we'd have a negative times a negative, so I know my answer is going to be positive at the end. 5 times 9 is 45. 3 times 4 is 12. 12 can go into 45, not 4 times, because that would be whoa, here. Yes, not 4 times, because that would be 48, so it would be 3. And then that would be 36, so that would be 9. Close. If we wanted to simplify, this could then be simplified both by 3. So this would equal a positive 3 and 3/4. Perfect. All right, so multiply fractions, make improper, multiply across, easy peasy. Let's practice some dividing. Okay, again, same idea. First thing we have to do is make them improper. So we have 5 times 5 is 25, plus 1 is 26. Let's say negative being divided by 6 7/3. From here, we know a negative divided by a positive is going to give us a negative answer. If we just write that down at the beginning, now we can forget about it. This stays a 26/5. Change it to multiplication, flip the fraction upside down, so it becomes 3/7. 26 times 3, if that's not mental math, which it is not for me, I would just show that on the side, is a 78 over a 35, and it's a negative. 35 can go into 78 twice, because that would be 70, so it would be a negative 2 and 8/35. Yeah, 8 and 35 can't be divided by the same number, so that's it. If you haven't already, pause the video, try these next two on your own, and then resume the video to check. Positive divided by negative is a negative. 1/3, there's nothing to make improper there. 3 times 2 is 6, plus 2 is 8. Keep, change, flip. Keep my 1/3, change to multiplication, flip it to 3/8. 1 times 3 is 3. 3 times 8 is 24. This is going to be a negative, because a positive divided by a negative is a negative. Both those numbers can be divided by a 3. So this will be a negative 1/8. I'm so sorry for this pen. It looks so sloppy. Okay, number 4. Negative divided by negative is going to give us a positive answer. Negative 6/5 because it does not need to be improper, it already is. Same thing with negative 1/2. Keep, change, flip. Keep my 6/5 the same. Change division to multiply. Flip 1/2 to 2/1. Multiply across. 6 times 2 is 12. 1 times 5 is 5. My answer is positive, so it's a positive 12/5. 5 can go into 12 2 times. That would give 10. So if we took away 10 from that 12, that would give us 2/5 left over. So a positive 2 and 2/5 is our answer. All right, so that's how we multiply and divide rational numbers. Same rules as integers, same process as multiplying and dividing positive fractions and decimals. It's just that added step of knowing what sign our answer is going to have.